Charles.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Regulatory and cultural crosswinds, the topic here. I can't think of a corner of the economy that's sort of more at the intersection of those than crypto. Starting with the big story, Donald Trump's president. I think he was ushering in a golden age of crypto. The reign of terror is over. His crypto czar said, "Do you buy it? Is this actually going to be a game changer?"
I really think so. We were like in the deep freezer for the last 2 to 4 years, at least 2 or 3 years, and you can see the sunlight now, and I think that's a very profound thing. And I think the crypto golden age is what's upon us. There's going to be a framework in terms of how to change taxes, legislation, regulation. That's really going to unleash an enormous amount of innovation. The financial industry has been so held back over the last, say, 10 or 20 years by a combination of regulation and maybe just the weight of history. And being able to take the financial system and really have software eat it is an enormous change. Really, the financial system was just an intranet. It's a private closed system. And the whole point of crypto is you can now have it be open and public again, as it's been in the past, and yet still be secure and still be reliable and still be safe. And so that's a big change from how the financial system has ever operated. And that really allows the innovation of the internet to meet the financial system in a way that you've only maybe seen tangentially. And of course, the crypto has a lot of elements where it's like the Wild West. But I think that's partly been because when you're in the deep freezer, but you have something profound that's happening, it's pushed everything outside of the mainstream, and now there's a chance to bring it into the mainstream.
You talk about the Wild West. I mean, a piece of this is cultural, and I don't know. What do you make of crypto bros? But why? What is the Venn diagram between the crypto community and, for lack of a better word, for the MAGA community? Like that you've seen it kind of blossom over the last couple of years. A lot of people from the crypto community, very powerful at the moment. What is the cultural nexus of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting combination. I think the first thing is wanting more freedom. Freedom to be able to hold your own assets, to hold your own money, to be able to move money anywhere in the world in a way that's easy and low cost. And I think there's been some element of having more freedom that MAGA has represented. I also think the idea that innovation can lead us to a brighter place, a brighter future. And it's not something that you need to try to regulate out of existence, which is certainly, I think, how the last administration acted. By the way, I think crypto is, by and large, bipartisan. I just think that the last administration was very negative. But there was many examples, even in the last Congress, of bills passing on a bipartisan basis in a number of different ways. So that can sometimes be lost here. I think the last administration really weaponized the regulatory apparatus against crypto and other industries. We have been debanked. Many others have been debanked. I can't tell you how many bank accounts we have lost or products that were shut down and et cetera. And I don't think that's going to age well. And I think there was examples of that happening to MAGA as well. And so that is where there was like some kindred spirit here. I don't know exactly what MAGA stands for or crypto stands for, but I think there, in that amorphous pool, there was an overlapping.
You're talking about your biggest product got shut down effectively by the SEC. Explain what you mean when you think that that's not going to age well. This was a stable coin. You tell the audience kind of what it was and why it was deemed to be outside the existing regulations as they stand now. But what makes you think that decision is going to look a little off market?
Well, I think so. Paxos is a blockchain infrastructure company, a crypto and blockchain infrastructure company. And I think we pride ourselves on is that we have been regulated from the very beginning. And so we created the first trust in the United States, based in New York. And a trust is basically a bank, except it's safer. So if someone sends us assets, we hold it. It's not in Paxos' name, it's in the client name. And so that's a very safe way of holding assets. And that's allowed us to be the infrastructure for, say, PayPal and Venmo and Interactive Brokers and Mercado Libre and Nubank and Stripe. So lots of very large enterprises use us because we've been regulated from the beginning. And we've gone on and now created regulated entities in both Abu Dhabi and Singapore. And there isn't a federal framework to be regulated in the U.S., so we've done it on the state basis. But lots of firms do it in New York State, like Bank of New York, or even Goldman is regulated in New York. The DTCC, which holds all the stocks and bonds in the country, regulated in New York. So it's a common regulator. One of the products that we have is stablecoin products. So we take dollars and we tokenize them. And we can talk a little about why I think that's so transformative. It's actually relatively simple. Take a dollar, put it on the blockchain, and just like a dollar in your pocket. And one of them was branded a Binance stablecoin, BUSD, and the SEC alleged that it was a security. And without being investigated, we were given a Wells notice. And
It's an intent to sue.
that's an intent to sue us. Usually that's at the end of an investigation, not at the beginning. But I think there's a lot of Wells notices that were given out, and I'm sure there'll be more in-depth exploration of why that happened. And eventually was dropped by the SEC. And the number of Wells notices that have been dropped around almost to zero. So we're really proud of the fact that after, I think, 15 or 16 months it was dropped. But it never should have been given to us. Stablecoin is just a dollar. You buy a T-bill, it's cash, but on a blockchain. It's not a security. No one thinks it's a security. And there are lots of other issuers of stablecoins, and they weren't given Wells notices either, at least as far as we know. Normally it's supposed to be private, but ours was released publicly. And so I think that's something that people will look back at and say, what purpose did that serve? It drove stablecoin issuance offshore. We're operating from the U.S., fully regulated. And by the way, it's the same as our product that we launched for PayPal. But unfortunately, I think there was a mindset in a period of time after FTX failed where I think there was a sense of, well, we now have our chance to try and kill this industry. And they really tried very hard to do that from a regulatory perspective and even from an administrative perspective. And it didn't ultimately work. And I think that's what this new administration is about. And hopefully we create the right framework so that we can thrive as an industry and create the promise of changing the financial system.
I wonder if some of the resistance, in particularly regulatory corners, is, and I'm sure you'll tell me why I'm wrong, but the actual use cases for Bitcoin, right? You can say it's a store of value, except that it swings all over the place all the time, right? It could perhaps be a currency, but it's actually less efficient to buy things. It is sort of thought to be kind of anonymous, except every transaction is tracked. You've talked about it a little bit as a strategic asset for the country, which is perhaps actually maybe the one that makes a little bit of sense to me. But talk about why this industry has a right to exist. Why we should not only just not shut it down in the wake of FTX, which was a giant scandal. These things get hacked a lot. You can understand why there's resistance to it. What is the push?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's been lots of bad actors. We haven't done ourselves any favors as an industry. But there's also lots of good actors. And by the way, that's true in every industry. I mean, the financial system almost melted down from some of the most regulated institutions in the whole world. Lehman Brothers, et cetera, go on, huge bailouts, people, paying enormous amounts of fines. And, no one said, let's shut down the whole financial system. And, by the way, nobody's doing anything illegal here in using this technology. But you could use it illegally. That's a different thing from the technology itself being illegal. I think it's a very powerful technology. And technologies are tools. They can be used in the right way, they can be used in the wrong way, just like anything else. And if you talked about Bitcoin in specific, that's one way of using a blockchain. And what is a blockchain? It's basically creating a public database. That's the cool thing about it, is that every database before blockchains were private. Someone had to run it. One person had to run it, or a couple of people had to run it. And that's what made the financial system and really all networks kind of private networks. And the internet came along and it was open, but there was not like a database per se. You still had to rely on some central database provider. It might be Google or whoever. And now with the blockchain, you don't. And one of the things that's on a blockchain is Bitcoin. Now, I happen to remember long enough where the only thing on a blockchain was Bitcoin. But we've got long past those days now. There are lots and lots of emerging ways of using a blockchain. And one of them is putting assets on the blockchain. Dollars, that's called a stable coin. And now a dollar can move 24/7 instantaneously for basically no cost to anybody anywhere in the world. And that's a huge an innovation that's now possible because of blockchain. And Bitcoin, really, because they were synonymous at the beginning. And you can start programming and creating ways for people to own pieces of networked economies when they're starting out small and people getting a piece of it. Imagine when Twitter started out, they basically captured all of the economic value of the early users. What happens if the early users had a Twitter coin? And all the content that they helped create allowed them to take some of the benefit from what they ended up building as a community. And so that's what you're able to do with crypto and blockchain over time. And so I think Bitcoin has a very specific and very good use because it's a limited asset that's on a blockchain that everyone has gravitated towards. And in some ways it's like gold, but digital. And gold swings around in price, and so does Bitcoin. But maybe that's really the dollar swinging around in price. Maybe if we inverted our thinking, dollars have essentially gone down enormously against the value of gold. In Bitcoins or gold, and whatever price you want to look at it.
Should we have Donald Trump has talked about in vague terms, sort of sovereign wealth fund. Should we have a strategic Bitcoin reserve the way we have an oil reserve and a gold reserve?
Absolutely. But every hammer sees a nail. So, but I absolutely believe that we should. And I think
energy CEO coming up next. So
that's
we'll
right.
ask about the oil.
And by the way, to me, Bitcoin is energy. The perfect form of money would be a kilowatt hour, but we don't have to get into that. The point is, though, that investing in Bitcoin is investing in energy, fungible energy.
You operate you said you're regulated in Singapore, the UAE. Do you think that crypto, that its future is dollar denominated in the same way that the dollar is, basically the reserve currency of the world, fiat?
Everybody in the whole world wants a dollar. I can tell you this universally. It's the most wanted product that the U.S. produces. It's dollars. Unfortunately, the delivery mechanism is like the post office right now. You can't get dollars. If you can get it, it's slow to move around. It's very, very cumbersome. And the whole point of having dollars on a blockchain is that you have it moving in a modern way at the speed of the internet. And that's what the payment system needs. That's what the financial system wants. And if it's delivered in a way that the market needs, the dollar is going to remain the unit of account, no matter what happens. And if it doesn't meet the needs, it's a product, if you think about it that way. What are the needs of my users? And the whole world is a user of the dollar, but we don't let everyone use it. And they're going to figure out a way to get it, either with a stable coin, and if we prevent that from happening, then it'll be something else. And so it's in the U.S. national interest to make sure that people can get access to dollars. And if they do, the world will be denominated and continue to be denominated in dollars. If you look at right now the crypto world, it's like 98% of all transactions have a dollar on one side, a dollar-denominated asset on one side. That tells you something, because in the FX world, it's only 80%. So you actually get even more concentration in this world, but you have to have the right product for the needs of the market. And that's where the private sector can come in. And that's what Paxos is doing in many ways with some of our products.
You'd written before the election an open letter, I think, to both Trump and Kamala Harris, saying something actually I found pretty surprising, which is that Europe, which generally speaking has a competitiveness problem, had actually capitalized on U.S. missteps here and had sort of gained an advantage. What would it take to level the playing field?
I think the crypto industry, in some way, maybe perversely to its reputation, wants to be regulated, wants to have clear rules, wants to know about how it can interact in a way that can reach societal-wide scale. And right now, it's kind of still been kept pretty fringy, and it's not mainstream. And part of that's even the industry problem of how do you make this stuff really easy for people, just like your phone's easy to use. But really, I think that shouldn't be the limitation for how this technology reaches adoption over time. And you really have to think about how can you take this technology and make it very simple and very easy for everyone to be able to use. And if you do that, I think a lot of these other problems kind of start to fall away, and it doesn't feel like nearly as fringy and confusing as it has been for people.
Well, listen, thank you so much. This is a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, great to be with you. Yep, thank you.
Please welcome Chris Womack, CEO of Southern Company.